Hello and welcome back to I Love This Movie. You're here with your host, Matt, and as always, I'm joined by Corey and Adam. And this week, we'll be reviewing the 1992 holiday classic, The Muppets Christmas Carol. Directed by Brian Henson, this movie was adapted from the 1843 novel, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It stars Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge alongside Muppet performers and some of your favorite characters like Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, and so many more. But let's get into the story. Scrooge, a bitter and hateful man, views Christmas as just another day. While the town comes alive in spirit, Scrooge stays to himself until one night his life is changed forever. He's visited by three ghosts, the ghosts of past, present, and future, each showing him his own story and how it's made an impact on his life, and not only for him, but all those around him. And today we're going to talk about the movie itself, what we loved about it, some theories, some fun facts. And if you've never seen the movie, it's fantastic. It was actually my pick as one of my favorite Christmas movies. Watch it every year, from the songs being catchy and just being a fan of the Muppets and what Jen Henson does. It's just fantastic. But before we dive deeper into this, I wanted to get some initial thoughts from both Corey and Adam. So I'll actually start with Adam this time. Adam, what were your initial thoughts watching this movie again for the review?
Oh well, it's impossible not to like this movie. I've seen this, every year. I watched it every year since I was a kid, and there's just something about it that is timeless. I mean, the story is timeless. The Charles Dickens story, A Christmas Carol, has been adapted over and over again, and then having the Muppets adapt it is a really unique and refreshing take on the story. So yeah, I love it. I never get enough of it.
Yeah, I would agree on what both of you were saying. I thought it was just a classic Muppets twist on the Charles Dickens classic. Just Muppets humor, just the way they move, the way they talk, Rizzo, there's just everything, the story. I just thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. This is actually, I didn't grow up watching this movie. It wasn't one of my childhood classic movies. I don't know what was wrong with me. I grew up watching Home Alone 2. So this is a fairly new movie to me, and I really did enjoy it. I watched a bunch of other Muppets movies, but for some reason this one escaped me all these years, and I do feel like I'm going to have this one as a part of my catalog for the Christmas holidays now. So I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, Corey, I'm glad you brought up Rizzo because Rizzo and Gonzo are kind of my favorite parts of this movie. It was a very good storytelling technique to have Gonzo as Charles Dickens, the narrator of the story, and using Rizzo as his kind of comic foil. And then it also helps make this a very faithful adaptation of A Christmas Carol. A lot of Gonzo's dialogue is taken right from the book.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because when you look it up, just as far as who's playing who, all the Muppets are playing actual characters from the book. Besides Rizzo, he's just playing Rizzo the Rat. And just the way that he plays off of it, just humor, he's not really a character, obviously, from the story, but I just felt like he was necessary in a Muppet story to tell this. Just the way that he was being used as an object to clean windows. He used him to warm up the fireplace. And the jelly bean scene was great too. I thought it was pretty good. It was great though.
Yeah, and when Rizzo annoys Gonzo almost to the last possible straw, and Gonzo just gives him the look like, "What is wrong with you?" And then Rizzo just kisses him right on the nose. That's probably the best joke of the entire movie. I mean, there's a lot of good ones, but for me, that's probably my favorite joke.
I really enjoyed the joke with the rats that worked at Scrooge's office, the bookkeepers, and talking about the cold and how they were cold and they wanted to get heat, and they were like, "My assets are frozen."
Yeah, right.
Heat wave. That's great. It's just stuff you don't get from other movies besides Muppets.
And the one thing that I really enjoyed about Rizzo's character and the banter back and forth between him and Gonzo is it didn't take away from the story. it never went too far. It never went overboard. It was just the right amount of that comedy, and whether he was using them as a object or just having the banter back and forth, it was the right amount that didn't take away from the story, and then you could dive right back in.
And they needed that. They needed that comic relief because the story of A Christmas Carol is fairly serious. There are some heavy moments, and it's a transformation story. But it's also a Muppets movie, so you have to have that Muppets humor and that slapstick and almost the no brainer humor where it's something you just don't have to think about. It's right in your face. So they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, they're even aware of it in the movie. They bring up how dark it is, and they're like, "Oh, the parents will talk to them about it." I'm like, it's because it is a fairly it's a fairly dark subject, but pretty much the whole movie. Besides the Christmas past, that's not too dark, but the rest of it, oh yeah.
And Adam, you brought up a point. I know we've talked about it before, but this adaptation was unique and different. In some cases, people didn't think it was going to be successful, because it was shortly after Jim Henson had passed away. So it was a little bit skeptical. They didn't know how it was going to go. So for it to be that first real film, after the death, and it being so successful and just feeling like a true Muppets movie, um, to where you mentioned the humor and the slapstick comedy, it didn't ever lose sight of that. I never felt like we lost a beat in that process.
Right, because you have all the elements that makes a Muppet movie. And also, I believe this is the first Muppet adaptation, because there's the Muppet movie, Great Muppet Caper, Muppets Take Manhattan. And I think this is the first adaptation, if I'm not mistaken, because Muppet Treasure Island came after this.
Yep, and this was the actual fourth Muppets film, theatrical film.
Right.
So yeah, and that was their big worry and concern from a box office standpoint, is can we pull this off? It's an adaptation of this classic story. Are people even interested in the story, let alone interested in the story being told by Muppets? And as you can tell today, I mean, we're talking about it, and this was it was a huge success then, and it carries over to this day and time, and just like Corey said, he didn't grow up with it, so shame on your parents, Corey. And
Yeah.
shame on what you were watching, whatever the heck they had you doing. But now Corey's going to share this with his kids, and for years to come. So yeah, I just thought it was really, overall, and that's why it's one of my picks. Um, Overall, it was just that feeling of it being Christmas. That's what I love the most about it. Sometimes we watch Christmas movies and you don't really get that feeling. There's so many now. It's like Hallmark movies and all these different original movies where it's just a love story about finding that one under the mistletoe. There's something about this that makes you appreciate what you got.
Yeah, I as you guys know, I'm a sucker for musicals or anything that has musical numbers in it. So I did enjoy pretty much all the songs in this. About Scrooge number at the beginning was great.
Well, let's talk about the music. I think we're all in agreement. The music, every song is a classic. Whether it's the opening Scrooge song, the One More Sleep Till Christmas, It Feels Like Christmas. All those songs are fantastic. There's a reason those songs are so well done, and they're so memorable, and they're so catchy. All of those songs are written by Paul Williams. Paul Williams wrote the original songs for the Muppet movie, and he is a star in his own right and a legend in his own right because he wrote a lot of hits in the 1970s, I think through the 80s. But the fact that they brought him back to take on these songs what was it, 15 years after the Muppet movie. I think that was a very good choice. I mean, they could have gone with a modern artist or somebody who was a more contemporary songwriter, but instead they said, no, we're going back to the roots. Jim Henson's gone. He's not a part of this movie because he had unfortunately passed away a couple years earlier. The fact that they brought Paul Williams in to give a little bit of that spark and that magic to the songs, that was a perfect choice.
And the funny part is you talked about what if they brought in a modern artist. All I thought about in my head was Michael Jackson and his performance in Captain EO. And,
yes.
And that's all I thought about, where we would not be listening to One More Sleep Till Christmas or, The Love Is Found. And instead there would be a lot of he's and no.
Which I believe he did the song for Free Willy. So just imagine the Free Willy song with the Muppets and put Jingle Bells in the background. That way you can get that Christmas feel to it. That's what we would have had.
That's a good movie. Free Willy?
Yes. No. I've never seen Free Willy. Don't pick it, please.
Changing subjects. Another thing I I have a question about is this obviously came out before what I'm going to address. So the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. That thing looks like a straight up Dementor from Harry Potter. Am I losing my mind?
Oh no, it does. It absolutely does.
The only thing that's scarier, the only thing that's scarier than that is the Ghost of Christmas Past.
Very true.
And that thing looks like something that's been conjured up from the other side and that you see during a sleep paralysis episode. I mean, this thing, and I read up on it. They rubbed it, and it was basically they rubbed this face in baby oil and then threw it in water, and that's how they got the floating effect. It looks possessed, and it whispers. Like, why is it gotta whisper? Just talk out loud. There's nobody else around. It's just you and Ebenezer.
So I think that is the part about this movie that I'm most uncomfortable with, because it is just kind of a weird Muppet character. It's like the Jim Henson Company was kind of taking their inspiration from some of the puppets that they made for either, like, I think it was like the Dark Crystal or the or Labyrinth, like those like humanoid type puppets that have these weird features in their face. It's like kind of that, but yeah, I appreciate the effort they put into it, and to make it like flowing, they did dunk it like in a tank of water. I don't know. I think they could have done a lot better with that particular character design.
Adam, you have some fun facts, but about just kind of what was going on in the movie. But one of the things just to kind of lead into that was when we're going through the Christmas Past and they bring up Belle, that seems like it was been a relationship they should have spent more time on, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the character development of Scrooge, you see him in his current state as a greedy, a miserly old guy who is just completely lost any type of joy, especially at the Christmas time. And you see his progression. And one of the main parts of his life that turned his heart cold was losing the love of his life, Belle. There is a great scene that was cut out of the original movie that has a song called The Love Is Gone. And Belle sings it. And it's essentially about how Scrooge has lost the love in his heart. Jeffrey Katzenberg, the studio head of Disney at the time, was the reason they cut that out of the movie, because he said kids are going to get bored. They're going to fall asleep during a song. Come on, we got to keep going. We got to go to the next scene, which was a terrible bit of advice. Brian Henson, being a new director and having all the weight of the Muppets on his shoulders 2 years after his father dies, agrees to it, doesn't fight it, but it completely, it changes the story, because at the end, Scrooge sings a reprise of that song, The Love We Found. So without The Love Is Gone, The Love We Found doesn't make sense. It just doesn't have that dramatic weight, and it doesn't bring everything together again.
Yeah, I agree. I watched it the first time not knowing that was a thing, and then I watched because it's obviously not included anywhere. I don't think it's not even like on a DVD copy. I think it was like the last time I read it was way back when they actually had it included. I watched it on YouTube, and then I watched the Muppets again. Yeah, it does definitely add a lot to the movie. It's what I thought about it. I don't know. Have you watched it yet, Matt?
Yeah, that's the only place I could find it was on YouTube. And I think the last time it was in there was on early, you know, released the VHS. I mean, we're talking like right when it came out, and then it was, you know, hey, we can't keep this in there. But back to that, the comment that was made, you know, kids are going to fall asleep. I mean, and then you look at what's happened since then, and even during that time period, you look at some of the Disney movies that were made, there's musical numbers that are slow and steady, and kids are still watching.
Well, Jeffrey Katzenberg is kind of a hypocrite when he says we can't have that scene and that song in this Muppets movie, but we can have Can You Feel the Love Tonight? We can have, you know, Tale as Old as Time. We can have Part of Your World. I mean, what is the difference between those songs and this one? There is no difference to me.
Yeah, the only difference that I could possibly see is that you're dealing with two human characters versus cartoon elements at that moment. You know, so in, you know, maybe his and again, this is just us, you know, theorizing, but maybe he thought that because it was two adults that were singing out on, you know, out in the snowy yard, or, you know, by, I believe they were by a pond, you know, kids are going to look at that and be like, yeah, this, I don't care about these people, let's bring back the Muppets. So that's a possibility. But at the same time, it just doesn't make sense. And to your point, it takes away from building up Scrooge's character and then the reprise at the end.
Yeah, so I have some questions about this movie, just things I didn't quite understand. Wanted to run them by you guys and see what you thought. See if you guys had any theories or opinions on it. I know it's a Muppets movie, but it just has to be asked. The Cratchits. So there's Mrs. Piggy, who's playing Mrs. Cratchit, and there's Bob Cratchit being played with Kermit the Frog. They're kids. The boys are frogs. The girls are pigs. How? How is that How is that possible?
Okay, so I'm glad that you brought that up, Corey, because this has been something that has perplexed me for many years, ever since I first watched it to the 20,000th time I've watched it. And it's how are there the boy frogs, the girl pigs, but there's not like a frog pig or a pig frog. There's no mix. I mean, biologically it doesn't make sense. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why we can't have a boy pig, why we can't have a girl frog.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
No, I understand. This is a delicate question, but it just has to be asked. You
No,
know?
it is, it's delicate, but it's real. I mean, I just I don't get it. I don't get it, and I don't understand. I think that they, like, yes, we have Miss Piggy. Yes, we have Kermit the Frog. Yes, there's a boy. Yes, there's a girl. But was there ever a plan to expand upon this to where there was going to be a frog pig or a pig frog? I think the Muppet fan base deserves a offspring of Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog and it be a frog, pig, pig, frog.
I don't care. I don't care if there's frog pigs. I don't care if there's frogs and pigs. I don't care if they have a gonzo.
We can go away from this topic because, and maybe we can talk offline about this, but you just brought up another scenario. You don't care if they had a gonzo. That is a completely different storyline than the Cratchit family.
And yeah, Gonzo's never explained what he is. He's a whatever. Now,
Yeah.
don't say Muppets from space. Then they kind of explain like he's like an alien. I don't count that in the Muppets canon. I like to have the mystery behind what Gonzo actually is.
That's a good movie though. Muppets from Space.
Anything after Muppets Treasure Island, it loses a lot of the appeal to me. What do you think,
Is
Matt?
that the one where they have the doctor scene?
The what scene?
The doctor scene where it's Rizzo. I think then the Shrimp Man, and they're acting like they're doctors with Kermit, and they're just saying doctor back and forth.
That's not Muppets Treasure Island. I'm not sure what that one is.
No, it might be Muppets in Space. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed that movie. I watch that one.
I do agree, Adam. Once you get to Treasure Island, it starts to go off the rails a bit. It starts to lose that feeling of a classic Muppet movie, and the characters and the comedy. And it's odd because you wouldn't think it would be that hard to do this, and obviously we're just three guys that love movies and talking about them, so we don't really have our foot in that element. But you would think that it would be easy, that hey, we know what works, so let's take it with the storyline and make sure that we develop the storyline the way it should be. Let's not just make the story not for the Muppets and we throw this out there, and then the Muppets and the comedy doesn't work, and then still move forward with it. And I think that's what happened with Treasure Island was, hey, this is good title, good screenplay. Let's go ahead and roll it out. And then they rushed to it, right? They didn't look at what they had done and what worked and what didn't work. And then we had missed opportunities. We didn't have the same type of character development. We didn't have the same comedy.
Well, I think Muppets Treasure Island was trying to mimic the success of Muppet Christmas Carol, because it's a adaptation of a classic story in literature. I think Muppets Treasure Island still works in the same vein as Muppets Christmas Carol. I think there are still enough good parts. It's not the best, obviously, but it still works enough for it to be one of those original Muppet movies from the Henson canon. Even though Jim Henson obviously didn't have anything to do with it, Brian Henson did. Frank Oz, Dave Goelz, all the Muppet performers were still performing at that time. It's my issues come much later, like the Muppets Wizard of Oz, Muppets in Space, and then the Jason Segel Muppets, which I really was hoping would be a callback to the Jim Henson days, but it wasn't. It wasn't at all. And I was so disappointed that it wasn't any better.
As I said before, I really enjoyed this movie. There's a couple parts I would consider to be, more my favorite parts. Just Rizzo and Charles Dickens. Just the narration, that was probably just my favorite part throughout the movie. I just thought it was a great humor they did to cut certain scenes, and it definitely helps to watch with kids now. So that was probably my favorite part of the movie. What was yours?
So my favorite part, it really happens whenever Scrooge finds that he's back in his room after he's went through his journey with all the ghosts, and he's back and he realizes that there's still time left. So as he opens up the window and he's trying to figure out what day it is because he doesn't want to miss it. And if you have to, you look at that, a lot of people in town, they think it's, there's old man Scrooge, right? He's going to be in a bad mood. So the great thing about Michael Caine and his character Ebenezer Scrooge, he plays around with that, knowing that everybody looks at him as the town grump. So whenever he goes to ask them questions, he in some cases puts on that grumpy facade and plays that character, and then he either winks at him or smiles, and then breaks that tension and shows them that he's a changed man, which leads us up to him buying, the food, the goose, and giving everybody the time off they need, and that leads us into the reprise and the dinner scene. So that really for me, that coming to that new character and that realization at the end, um, and just how he played the character, kind of transforming and playing off of what he knew himself. It was making fun of himself essentially. He wasn't afraid at that point to know that, hey, I was a jerk, and everybody's going to look at me as the guy that's the jerk. And he played off of that. And I really liked how that scene progressed, because it could have just been really simple. He comes back and ultimately, immediately, everybody just pretends like it's normal, right? But they all had some reservations there.
And can we say how good Michael Caine was as Scrooge? Such a good choice. Such a good choice. And I was watching I think it was a made for, or behind the scenes. It was behind the scenes featurette. And he said, when he was approached for it, he said, listen, I'm going to play this like I'm in the Royal Shakespeare Company. He said, I'm going to make it serious. I'm going to commit everything to that character. And it works. It definitely works, because having that heavy dramatic performance and then pairing that with the rats, doing the heat wave and the comedic banter. Oh, it works perfectly. It works perfectly together.
Yeah, I agree with how he was playing Scrooge after, when he was doing the reprise, especially when he was going to see the Cratchits. He knocked on the door, he shoot everyone away, and he's like, you're supposed to be at work today. And he's like, it's Christmas. And then he plays it off from there. And I just thought he did a great job as that character.
So we've talked about some fun facts. We've talked about some different theories and our best and favorite scenes and our least favorite scenes. And now we've come to the end, and we're going to get some ratings now. This was my choice, so I'm going to go last. So let's see what Corey's rating is, and then we'll go to Adam. And so Corey.
So I did enjoy this movie, as I said previously. This is not one I grew up on, so I don't have the same nostalgia that I feel like would help the score. I still overall really enjoyed it. It was a great take on the classic tale. I know you're not going to like it, but I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Thought it was solid, but I do enjoy other Christmas movies more.
All right, my rating is based on the fact that Jeffrey Katzenberg, he didn't screw up the movie, but he did kind of hinder the story by taking out that scene, The Love Is Gone. It doesn't connect the middle to the end. So I have to give this a 9.5. The VHS copy I grew up with that had that scene in it, 10 all day long. But we don't get that version on the Disney Plus. Or I don't think, if you buy it on Amazon, I don't even think it's on that anymore. It should be. I don't know what Disney's waiting on. I mean, I think there is a demand out there in the fan base that says, please put this back in. I know Brian Henson wants it back in because he's done interviews, and I think he's on the record saying, yeah, please put it back in. That's the way it was intended. So 9.5.
Curious, not a 10. I mean, I think it should just be a 10 no matter what, right?
If it was a grade, it would be an A.
This was my pick, and there's just something about, these Muppets, this film, the Muppets within this film, the writing, the characters, the songs. I do agree that, with the missing song in the character development of Ebenezer Scrooge, it does leave something out. But I think with everything else, not including the frog pigs or lack thereof. But everything else, I think it's warranted, and it needs to be a 10, and that's why I'm rating it a full 10. I know we don't rate, and we give these 10s out, just like candy, but I can't get around it. I can't see myself doing the 9.5, just for those few errors, few things that I would change, because overall, and just thinking about the songs and the memories that I've had watching this, and then being able to watch it, every year, and now, bring my kids into it and stuff like that. It's just, it deserves the 10. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching our review of A Muppets Christmas Carol. If you like what you heard today and what you watched, please leave us a like, comment below. Make sure to subscribe and hit that little bell to make sure that every time we post, you're the first to know about it. We're also on social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook, so make sure to check us out for updates there, more movie facts, and a whole lot more. And then lastly, we know that life happens sometimes. You're not able to sit and watch on your phone or your computer or your TV, our YouTube channel. No need to worry. You can listen to our podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more different podcast options. Please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast and give us those 5-star reviews. It really does help us. And until next time, this is Matt. We have Adam and Corey with I Love This Movie, and we can't wait to see you guys for our next movie review. See you then.